Okay. Um, when it comes to operating machinery, and I guess your ability to operate in that realm, what's the impact of sleep deprivation? And obviously, shift workers and people working alternating days and nights are impacted. It's hard to get in that rhythm, like you sort of talked about. So, what are the tangible sort of impacts on our ability to operate machinery when we're sleep deprived?
Sure. So whether we're talking about, heavy vehicles, whether we're talking about driving a car on the road, like I said, a whole different range of our performance is affected. And then when we look at what that means, in the real world is, we have trouble focusing and concentrating on where we're driving. If you drive behind someone on the road who is fatigued, they tend to look like they're drunk. So drunk driving and fatigue driving look really similar. Um, they have trouble staying straight in the lane. They weave across off the side of the road and then sort of jerk back on, drive across the other side of the road, across the centre lines. Trouble keeping a constant speed. You tend to become really focused on the road as well, and you lose all your peripheral awareness, and your reflexes are slower. So, like if a roo jumps out at you, you might not see it quick enough. You don't respond as quickly. You don't make good decisions. So you're likely to have, I guess, more of a accident and respond a lot less quickly than if you were driving when you've had enough sleep and you're not fatigued. Also, when we're looking at heavy vehicle driving, one of the big things we see with incidents on mine sites is micro sleeps. So micro sleeps is basically your brain saying, "I've had enough. I need some sleep," and it switches off. And it could be for a couple of seconds, it could be 10, 20, 30 seconds. It just depends on what wakes you up. And unfortunately, often it's you hitting something, or you see people where their heads nod down and then it sort of jerks up again. So micro sleeps happen if we are sitting at a computer, if we're driving a truck, if we're driving a car. And, if you're driving a car at 110 k's an hour and you're essentially asleep for 10 seconds, there's trees, there's other cars. Um, so, yeah, there's some quite scary things that we see with fatigue and driving, whether it's, like I said, on a mine site, in trucks or in cars.
So, yeah, pretty profound impacts of poor sleep when it comes to operating machinery, be that on the road or on the mine site or a construction site context. And I think in part of the materials sent through in preparation for this podcast, I believe in some states in the US, they're actually prosecuting on people that have been proven to be sleep deprived as a contributor to accidents. And I think there is studies, no doubt, and scientific views on the equal or maybe even worse impacts of being sleep deprived versus being inebriated in your ability to operate machinery.
Absolutely. So in the States, they've got specific legislation in some states. But in Australia, there's been prosecutions as well with people who've been found to be driving when they're knowingly fatigued. So I've seen it in Western Australia. I've seen it in Mackay Court. Seen it in Adelaide recently, where there was a paramedic who fell asleep while he had a patient in the back of the ambulance. Um, there's also big implications for people that don't realise with their insurance and work cover. So if people are knowingly fatigued, and particularly if they have, say, a journey management plan and they're not following what's in it, I know of instances where work cover have said, "We're not covering you because you haven't followed, what you said you would do," and also car insurances have refused to insure people. The police are looking out for it. They can get an amazing amount of information out of people's cars and phones and see whether they actually were where they said they were, whether they had actually slept. They can get second by second tracking. And when we look at fatigue accidents, they look really, they look there's a particular way that a fatigue accident looks. So, there's generally no braking. A lot of times people have got their cruise control on. There's no changes in the steering until they hit a tree or another car. So the accidents tend to be quite high impact. If we look across Australia, between 16 and 20% of all fatalities on the road are due to fatigue. So it's really similar to what we see with drink driving. The accidents look similar, the impact is really similar.
Yeah, crazy. So I think if that's not a a wake-up call, pardon the pun, to focus on the importance of making sure that you factor that in regarding your driving decisions, much like you would, after a beer or two, you make that decision: do I, don't I? It's a similar sort of dynamic in terms of the repercussions if we get in cars when we're sleep deprived. So really interesting sort of unpack.